Greetings and welcome to From the Basement. In this video we're going to finish off the Laz project by putting in the preview, adding in the game controller, the button for clearing a level, finishing touches, all that stuff. We're going to wrap everything up. So at the moment, the only way we can get boxes to drop down is if we actually manually do the C, S, M, so on and so forth, manually drop in the boxes. Obviously, that doesn't really make for much in the way of interesting gameplay if the player can actually just deliberately choose, okay, you know what, I'm just going to build up a staircase of stone boxes here, and yeah, life is going to be good. And of course, I already messed up my staircase of stone boxes, so so on and so forth. You get the point. Not much in the way of challenge here. And, of course, we've got to still make Lazarus afraid when his incoming death is hurtling towards him. So, let's get this taken care of. Actually, first, there is something I want to take care of right now, while I'm thinking of it before I forget, again, is that there's always the possibility that on your copies, the copy that you're working on, Laz Squish gets hidden. Again, remember we saw this error in the Galactic Mailer program, where due to the drawing order, the ship landed was being drawn behind the asteroid. It's entirely possible, depending on how you're having Laz Squish drawn, that your Laz Squish is not showing up. And again, the easiest way to guarantee that this is not the case is just, set the depth order on Laz Squish to like a negative value. So that way it's always drawn last. Because remember, higher numbers are drawn first, lower numbers are drawn later. So if this is -10 and everything else is a depth of 0, it's always guaranteed to be drawn on top. Alright, let's make some preview boxes. I'm not actually going to put those in the boxes category there, because these are just more of like generic objects. How this works, so here, let's just do the stone preview first, because that's what the book does. So we're going to do stone next. And actually, we'll just do all of them. So stone next, stone box. And our next boxes don't actually do much. So stone next. And let's go ahead and get all of these guys in here. So create metal next. Create wood next. And create card next. There we go. So we've got stone next, metal next, wood next, and card next. Now, these objects by themselves aren't going to do anything. Instead, these are just previews to let the player know, hey, this thing's coming up next. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a controller object. We dealt with these a little bit in Galactic Mailer. So we're going to create an object. I'm going to call this controller. I am not going to assign it a sprite. And the controller's got a lot of different jobs. The first job we're going to give controller is detecting when we don't have a next available, we need to generate a new next. And for this, I'm going to deviate from the book here a little bit. I'm going to use an end step event here. So I'm going to say step, end step. And then in the regular step event, we're going to do something else for the controller. But at the end of a step, after everything else has been processed, we need to take a look and see, do we have any next boxes left? And I'm also going to do one step further than the book as well here, because at the moment, these are all separate boxes. So if I wanted to check to see if these guys exist, I'd have to do what the book suggests. Go in here to the control and do an instance count and say, well, is there 0 next boxes, and are there 0 metals, and are there 0 woods, and are there 0 cards? And if I wanted to come back in later and add an additional box type, I'd have to come back in here and modify it to say, well, and there's this 0 of these new boxes. Blah. So what I want to show you is the generic never placed parent object. So I'm going to create a new object here, and I'm going to call this base next. Not even going to give it a sprite, nothing. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through all of my regular nexts, and I'm going to set their parent to base next. So stone, metal, wood, card. All right. And we're good. So now all I have to check for is a base. Oops, no, not controllers. A base next. Just remember, a stone next, a metal next, a wood next, and a card next are all parented to base next. And so if I count the number of base next objects that I have, and that is equal to 0, then that means I can do something. Now, there happens to be, and we want to create one of 4 different next objects, stone, metal, wood, card. And it just so happens, conveniently enough, there is a create random function. And even more conveniently enough, it has 4 options. If you want to do more than 4 random objects on a create command, sorry, you're digging into the GameMaker scripting language. For drag and drop, however convenient is it that we have 4 box types and 4 possible objects we can toss into this randomizer? I wonder. So we can come in here and say, okay, you know what? Stone, metal, wood, card. So it's going to randomly choose between one of these 4 to create it. And the x, y, the x value we will leave at 0. And the y value, 440. Remember, this is a 640 by 480 room. So by putting this at 0, 440, the lower leftmost square is going to be our preview object. And do not check relative. This is an absolute coordinate. So if there are no base next objects, we're going to create a random next object. Now, the next thing we need to do with this controller is put in a step, just a regular step event. And now the controller needs to ask 2 questions. 1, do I have any falling boxes? Now, again, the book has you checking for all 4 box types. Do I have a card falling, wood falling, stone falling, metal falling? But since everything's parented off of everything else and everything just narrows down to a card falling, all we have to check for is a card falling. You see how useful this parenting thing is? So we're going to come in here and we're going to go to control, and I'm going to say, I'm going to count, and boxes, my instances of card falls are equal to 0. And since we're going to have to chain our questions here, I'm going to put in blocks to make this a little bit clearer. And then I also have to ask the question, how many last stands do I have available? And this needs to be equal to 1. All right, why do I need to make sure that I have a last stand? It is very possible that on the frame that a box falling lands and turns into a standing box and triggers this code, that, well, you might be jumping or moving to the left, in which case you're not a last stand, and the boxes need a last stand to be able to lock onto the XY coordinate. Now you might say, well, why can't we do a generic parent object for last stand? So that way we can generate the boxes at any time. Yeah, we could, honestly. But it just kind of works a little bit better this way. I don't want to deviate too far from the book. We're deviating pretty far as it is. And I think it just works better this way to say, okay, you know what? Nested condition checks here. You know, if I have no falling boxes and Lazarus is standing still, we're going to drop the box. So remember, no one's going to be able to hit the arrow key fast enough to not have a single frame of standing still in between jumps. It's not going to happen. So we've got card falling is equal to 0, and last stand is equal to 1. And here we're going to do a little bit of brute forcing. We don't know which of the next objects we have. And since we're doing the drag and drop methods, there's no way for us to sort of poke those objects and say, hey, go turn yourself into the proper thing. So we're going to brute force this a little bit. We're going to go into main 1, and we're going to say change instance object stone next into a stone fall perform events yes. That's critical. That perform events yes. Remember, that means our create event. We must have our create event fire, so that way the stone fall jumps to above the player outside the screen. Now, what happens if there's no stone next objects in the room? Well, this command doesn't do anything then. And that's what I mean by we're going to brute force this. We're going to change all stone fall or all stone nexts into stone falls. We are going to change all metal nexts into metal falls. Perform events yes. Don't forget that perform events yes. We are going to change all wood next into wood falls. Perform events yes. And we're going to change all card next objects. Oops. I got the wrong thing there. That should be card fall, and that should be card next. And we're going to change all card next into card falls. It's a bit of a brute force method, but honestly, player could care less. It's going to get the desired results, and it's going to work. So let's test to make sure it actually does work. So let's go into our room. Oops, and actually let me go ahead and close out my controller so it updates its name. Now I'll go into the room, grab a controller, drop it in there, close out the room. Let's hit the play button and see what happens. And off it goes. Now, hopefully you're beginning to see why I chose to have my manual creation process. Because if I was trying to test my blocks for crushing and interaction, I'd be waiting a long time to get the necessary testing actions to be able to test things. Like if I wanted to test wood crushing these guys, oh, well, no, I just lost them all because I got a metal, and there's the stone, and yeah. So this is why I had the commands for dropping the boxes manually, because that really enables me to control things a lot better. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we're not seeing our preview object. And again, that's most likely just a draw error, so draw order problem. So I'm going to come over here, and for all of my next objects depth, since it's manually set right here, this is not a property that gets inherited. So we got to go through and manually set this. I'm going to set all of these to -1. Or actually, you know what? A better solution to that would be to take my wall object, since there's only one of them, and set that depth to like 5 so that they're drawn earlier. And now, hitting the play button. There we go. Now I can see my preview object. So wood should come next, and it does. A card should come next, and it does. A stone should be coming next, and it does. So on and so forth. And see, this gives the player now the ability to plot out where they're going to be putting things. Or building up their towers of stuff. Alright, so that gets us our level control. Let's go ahead and get settled out here moving on to the next level. For this, we're going to need a button object. So right-click, create object, set the sprite to button. We'll call this button. And what we'll do is we'll do a collision with last stand. Remember, while we're animating, we're a las left or right or jump left or jump right. So if we set our collision with las stand, we won't actually get the collision until Lazarus is all the way on top of the button. So we're going to do an add event collision with a las stand. And we pretty much, now we're going to have to do some modifications in the book. The book, this is like one of the few actual useful uses of the sleep command the book uses, but remember, we don't have sleep anymore. As we're just going to simply have to display a message saying good job and move on to the next level. This is actually one case where we don't want to set a timer because it would be really complicated. We don't want to give a falling block a chance to squish Laz because we paused while Laz was on the win button. So actually, in this case, putting in a timer to give the player a moment to look around would probably not be a good idea unless we did an additional object, Laz win, that nobody would collide or interact with. It would be messy. So instead of trying to delay here, we're just simply going to do a message. So actually, we're going to do a little bit more complicated than that, because what we're going to do is we're going to ask a question. We're going to ask the question, does the next room exist? And if the next room does exist, and that's over here on main 1, sorry, I didn't point that out. If room 1 does exist, then we will put in the message level cleared, hashtag on to the next. Otherwise, we are going to control else. If the next room does not exist, in other words, the player has cleared the last level, we shall instead say, no, not destroy. What am I doing? No destroying involved here. Message, you win the game. And then we will move to a different room, which is this one right here. And at the moment, our only option is room 0. So that'll just simply have to be our first choice. And that should be good. Now, of course, we actually need to redesign our room here a little bit. I'll open this up. First, I'm going to change on settings the name. I'm going to change this to level 1. Go into objects and shift right. Whoops, didn't mean to take out all of that. Now, since this is the first level, it should be fairly simple. Give a nice wide area for the player to play in. Not too high that they have to get up to. And I'll grab the button and put one button on each side. And we can test this to make sure it's going to work out okay. And of course, we can cheat because we can control the boxes to an extent. Oops, and I forgot that I nuked Laz. Which actually I suppose is as good a time as any to cover the title screen, actually. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm jumping around a little bit on this one. But let's create the title screen, or the title object. Title object. We'll set the sprite to sprite title. Now we're going to, again, we got to modify things from the book here a bit because the book uses the sleep command again. But we don't have a sleep command. So instead, we're going to cue in on an any key press. So keyboard any key. once we detected any key events, we're going to go ahead and create our controller object. So we will come down here. Well, actually, what we'll do is we'll transition our title into a controller object. So transition into controller, perform events not. The controller doesn't have any create events we need to worry about. And then we'll open the room back up, take out that controller, and instead put in our title object. And I'm using Alt to place this without snapping it. And also need, oops, once again, forgot to put Laz back in there. Laz stand. Drop him in right there. Hit the play button. And now, wait a moment. And as soon as I move, it starts. And we got to fix that visual glitch, so we'll just go into buttons, or button, and we'll set its depth to 5, and we should be good. We're almost finished with this. The next step, assuming that this works out okay, you win the game, and it takes me straight back. Our preview object is working fine. Okay. Almost there. Level design, we're not going to worry about that too much. I'm just going to duplicate this room. I'm going to call this level 2. And just simply going to make this a little bit harder. Oops, I'll have to come back and put my title screen back in here. And let's see here, objects. A little bit narrower and 1 unit higher for Lazarus to deal with. And title object, drag you back in here. And so now, after we clear the first level here, level cleared, on to the next. Ooh, and we've got a bug. An unintentional one. Those are actually kind of the good ones, because this gives me an excellent opportunity to show what happens if you completely screw up and you get locked up into an endless loop. Well, I was able to click on the X that time, but while I am thinking of it, because this will happen sometimes, you'll get the game so locked up that you just simply can't progress on. So let's say this has been completely locked up and it's not giving us enough time to even click on the X here. Maybe we're in full screen or something, I don't know. How do you safely kill this window without also killing the main GameMaker Studio window? Let's see, let's show our task manager here. And looking through all the junk I've got running on my computer, sorted by image name. Let's see here. Where's our G's? Where's our G's? Where's our G's? GameMaker Studio. Now that's not the one that I want to take out. Let's see here. Where is this actually? Description. Let's sort these by descriptions. Here we go. GameMaker-Studio.exe. That is not the one you want to kill. what you want to kill is runner.exe. Now, so I sorted them by description to be able to easily see where this is. And so the runner is the process that I want to end. So I end process on runner. Yes, I'm sure I want to end that process. It's been closed out. That's how you close out a window gone rogue. Do not close out the GameMaker process. Close out the runner process. All right, so let's go take a look at our little bug here. Aha, and there we go. I forgot to actually put in the move to next room event. Doink. Problem fixed. So let's go ahead and double check to make sure, okay, yes, we really did just fix it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Tunk. On to the next, and yay! And of course, because I'm trying to go too fast, I forgot to actually put in my button. Oop, that was a little... And as you can see, you've got to be careful. If you spam things a little bit too fast, you get them off track there. So you got to be careful with your cheating ways. And let's see, let's go ahead and put in a button here and a button here. Okay. So we've got one last thing to do, and that is get the Laz scared thing. How that's going to work is we're going to go into Laz. Oops, why do I keep going into the sprites? Close the sprites. We're going to go into our Laz stand object here, and we're going to hook on to our step event. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to main 1. We're going to set our sprite, and we're going to set our sprite to sprite Laz stand, and leave everything animating as usual. The reason for this is it is possible to get in a hopeless situation and have a falling box get you out of the hopeless situation. So you got to make sure you account for that. So we're going to account by that by every round changing our sprite back into the Laz stand sprite. Fair enough. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a series of checks. And we're going to check for collisions. We're going to check for collision 40, 0 relative. In other words, look to the right. Then we're going to look to the right and up relative. Then we're going to look to the left, relative. Then we're going to look to the left and up, relative. Finally, remember, this is one of the few times where I won't actually put in the control brackets because this would get crazy indented really fast. Basically, the only way we're going to ask this question if this question is true. We will only ask this question if this question is true, and we'll only ask this question if this question is true, and we'll only do the next action if all of those things are true, which is change our sprite into a Laz afraid. Where are you? There you are. And let's test that out. So let's see here. I should just be able to build this up here a little bit. And he's afraid. I can't move. I can't move. Squish. And to verify that I can get out of that, let's see here. Let's drop some wood boxes. Stone, ton, stone. I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm no longer afraid. I was able to get out. And so it works. Nope, and I'm not paying attention and I die. One final thing is putting in our sounds. So, music is a good thing to start on an object that is only there once. Now, the title object is a reasonable place to put this. Because we're going to put it on the create event and the title object, that means the music's going to restart on every level. Now, if we didn't want to do this, we'd have to get a little bit trickier. I'm not going to go down the path because we don't have any one object that is only ever created once, period, throughout this entire game. We don't have anything like that this time, like we did with the Galactic Mailer in that first title screen. So we'd have to use a persistent object, but I want to hold off on those for a future video. So we're just going to go ahead, add in a create event, and we're going to go into our sounds. And I guess we can get a little bit creative. We're going to check to see if a sound, if where are we? If the background theme is not playing, actually we can do that. We'll go ahead and use this action. If the background theme is not playing, play the background theme with looping set to true. So if we hit the play button, we should hear nice cheesy soundtrack. Oops, and I forgot to do one here. And it doesn't restart, so. All right, so death sound, that's actually fairly easy. We'll go into our Laz Squish event. No, because we'd have to change two things. Let's go into... now, the book doesn't allow Squish because the book doesn't use parenting. Since we use parenting, we can go into card fall, and on our collision with Laz stand, play a sound. Play sound squish. And then... whenever we collide with a wall, we can play a sound, wall. And when we crush objects, we need to play sounds as well. So card fall doesn't have any crushing, but wood fall does. So when we crush a card stand, play a sound. Sound crush. A metal fall with a wood stand. Crush. And a stone fall on a metal stand. Oops, and we also need to put the sound in all the wall events too. So, main one, sound, crush, come into wall. Effects wall, and go back through and get my wall events here. Double check that card falls. Collide with the wall. Yep, okay, I did put that in there just for consistency's sake. I'll put that up at the top. Next up on our list would be moving, so we'll go to Laz stand, and we need to put it in two places, so we can't just simply put the sound anywhere in here, because we need to make sure that we only play the move sound if we actually move. So right before each of these change instances, so play sound, move, And play sound. Move. All right, that takes care of left. Going into right. Play sound. Move. Yep, okay, in the block. Play sound. Move. In the block. Okay. And so here we've covered squish. The button needs a sound. So when we collide with last stand, before we play our message, because we need to make sure we start the sound before we go to that display message box, we will play sound button. That should be it. So we hit the play button. We got a cheesy little... You can hear the boxes landing. Hear the crush sound. Lots of crush sounds. And our squish sound, which honestly sounds more like a whoopee cushion than a squish to me, but yeah, what can you do? Alright, and that wraps up the Lazarus Project as far as implementing it from the book. Next up, koalas. Until then.